Time to turn our eye to business. Who better to join us than Kate Moody? Good evening to you. Starting with new unemployment data in the United States underscoring the economic challenges facing US President Joe Biden.
Yeah, it's not unexpected given the tendency that we've seen over the last few weeks, but certainly a sobering reminder of just what is at stake for the new administration. Another 900,000 people filed applications for jobless benefits across the United States last week. That's about 25,000 fewer than the previous week, but it is still well over 3 times higher than the weekly average a year ago. The hospitality industry remains the hardest hit. It has already shed 498,000 jobs in January alone. The overall number of people claiming unemployment benefits dropped substantially from 18.4 to 16 million. That is, though, largely because of a temporary lapse in coverage. It's expected to rise again once the latest emergency measures are put in place. Rebuilding America's labor market will be a long and uphill battle, one that President Biden hopes to tackle in the short term with more aid for businesses. Well, Wednesday's inauguration proceedings were watched closely around the world, including in French vineyards. Winemakers are among those who've been hit with tariffs under the Trump administration, and they're hoping for a shift in trade policy under the new president. Karis Garland reports.
These winemakers in France's Burgundy region have seen their US sales drop by 60% in the last year, and they blame tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. Their bottle of Chablis has gone from €10 to $12.50 for Americans, but they're hopeful that will change under the new president.
Évidemment, tout le monde souhaite une annulation des taxes. Ce serait bien plus simple qu'on puisse retravailler comme avant. Mais là, malheureusement, on ne sait pas. Voilà. Donc là, ce qu'on vend actuellement aux États-Unis, ce sont des vins d'entrée de gamme.
The tariffs are part of a conflict between the US and the EU. Each accused the other of illegally subsidizing Airbus and Boeing. The 16-year-old spat turned increasingly sour during Trump's presidency, with Washington imposing 25% tariffs on wine, cheese, steel, and other European products. The EU responded with its own round of tariffs on US imports. Joe Biden, however, said he hoped to repair the trade relationship with Europe, prompting optimism across the Atlantic.
Tout le monde suppose que il n'y a rien à gagner à prolonger ce différend et à prolonger ces taxes douanières qui sont imposées de part et d'autre.
There's also hope the Biden administration can make progress in a standoff over digital taxes, which has triggered threats of even more tariffs. Biden's team has committed to continue negotiations for a global deal to rewrite cross-border taxation rules.
Let's check in on the day's trading action now. After a record close on Wednesday, Wall Street has given up some of its gains, although the Nasdaq is still trading at record highs. The Dow Jones and S&P have both turned lower there, just below the flat line this hour. Shares of United Airlines dropping around 6.5% as it reported massive losses in the last quarter. The major European markets closed lower as well. The FTSE 100 down in London there, as was the CAC 40 and Frankfurt DAX there. Losses across the board as the European Central Bank said it would not change its stimulus support for the bloc's economy. Well, the ECB has kept its key bond buying program unchanged, having boosted its support measures back in December. This despite the growing risks that are posed by the coronavirus pandemic. Many countries across the bloc are back in or are considering lockdown or at least tighter restrictions as the virus continues to spread. ECB President Christine Lagarde said the start of vaccinations was an important milestone, but not one that would immediately boost economic activity.
Output is likely to have contracted in the fourth quarter of 2020, and the intensification of the pandemic poses some downside risks to the short-term economic outlook.
Moving on to some of the day's other business headlines now. Google has reached a deal with French media organizations to pay them for showing extracts of their work online. The organization that represents hundreds of newspapers in France says a deal's been done with the internet giant over what's called related or neighboring rights for their content. Their members will now be negotiating fees from Google for showing previews of those articles in their search results. Volkswagen is facing a fine of some €140 million from the European Union after it failed to meet tough new emissions standards. The German car maker said it had narrowly missed the target, blaming the pandemic for slowing it down. It said it's committed to expanding its electric and hybrid offerings this year. And KLM is to cut between 800 and 1,000 more jobs as the pandemic continues to affect air travel. The Dutch carrier, which is partners with Air France, said the recovery in the long-haul sector in particular was taking considerably longer than expected. KLM announced 5,000 layoffs in July. Airlines around the world have cut tens of thousands of jobs in the last year. And Mark, in a reminder of the financial cost that the pandemic is giving on the industry, Lufthansa has said today it's losing €1 million every 2 hours. And that's a vast improvement on what it was saying about in the last year or so. It was bleeding double that amount of cash at the height of the lockdown measures last year.
It is absolutely scary. Kate, thank you very much indeed. Kate Moody with The Business. Great to see you. Let's cross the studio. Simon Harding joins us.